Hello, so today I'm going to show you guys how to make a guided user interface. These are little windows that allow users who didn't necessarily program the code that you are running to access different areas of your code. It just makes it a lot more user-friendly, particularly if you're writing code that you want to use in the future where you might have forgotten exactly what you did, or if you're trying to pass it on to other people so that they can use it. That way they don't have to go in and make edits to the code every time that they want to run it for particular applications. So it's kind of useful just to make things a little bit more user-friendly. So the way that we open the Matlab guided user interface development environment is we type in the command guide into the command window, and that, just like I said, stands for guided user interface development environment. So it's an easy thing to remember. So just hit enter and it'll bring up this prompt, and I'm going to create a blank guided user interface, or GUI, and just hit OK to do that, and it's going to pop up with this window. And today what we're going to do is create a calculator. Pretty simple calculations that we're going to do just to get you guys familiar with this guided user interface environment. And some of you guys might have seen this before in other languages. The interface is thankfully a little bit similar between languages. So we have different options for types of things we can put into our guided user interface that are displayed here. So one that we're going to use today is a push button, and this is essentially a button that if you click something, you can program something to happen. So I'm going to stick one right here, and if you double click on the push button, it'll bring up this UI control menu, and it's got all these different properties. So you can do things like change the font or the color. You can play around with that if you like. But the main thing that we're going to do is change the string on the surface of the button. So I'm going to change this to OK. And then I'm also going to change the tag, because the tag right now is how Matlab is going to refer to this button once we generate code. And the tag push button 1 is not necessarily that memorable. If I have a bunch of push buttons, I might forget what the function of push button 1 is, so I'm going to change it to something a little bit more memorable so I can find it in the code later. So I'm going to just change it to OK button and go ahead and close that. And then I'm going to copy and paste this to create another push button, and this one will be a close window, so I'll change the text in the string part of the UI control menu, and I'll also change the tag again to close button. Okay, so I have these two buttons made, and we are going to have some text boxes. So here, this button here is an edit text box. Let me see if I can get it to display the function. Yeah, so edit text. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to create two little windows for editing text, and this allows the user to input whatever text they want. Again, I'm going to go into the UI control window by double clicking and go to the string, and I'm going to leave this blank because I want the user to put information in there. And I'm going to change the tag to num1 because I want the user to input a number. And I'll go ahead and close that. And I will copy this because I want the user to also put in a second number so we can do some operations. So again, changing the tag to num2 so I can find it later. Okay, cool. So now we have a window with two edit text boxes and two push buttons. But it doesn't really tell anyone what is going on. So I'm going to create static text items by clicking this text window here. So the first one is going to say, input your first number. Okay. And I'm not going to change the tag for this one because I'm not going to actually use it in the code later. I'm just going to use it as a way to communicate with the user. And then for the second one, I'm going to put input your second number. Cool. And again, not changing the tag because I don't really care to refer to it in the code later. And then I'm going to create one more box right here. And this is going to be where my answer pops up. So this one I'm going to leave blank, remove the text, and I'm going to change the tag to answer box. Okay, cool. So now I decided that I don't like where these are positioned, so I'm going to move them down here. So I have a little bit more room to work. And then I'm going to create some more, no, not edit text, some more push buttons. So the first one I'm going to stick here is going to be a plus sign. I'm going to change the string to have a plus, and then the tag will be plus. Oops, plus. Okay, cool. And then I bet you guys don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm going to create other calculator buttons. So this one will be a minus sign. This one will be a multiplication. And this one will be a division. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so you don't have to watch me create all these buttons. But remember that you should change both the static text on the front of the button as well as the tag name. Okay, so I've created all of my buttons, and so I have plus, minus, multiply, and divide are the names of my different buttons. So what I'm going to do now, I have my GUI the way I wanted. I'm just going to adjust the size a little bit so it's a little bit matches the dimensions that I need, and I'm going to move everything a little bit and then just make it a bit smaller. Okay, cool. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this, and this is going to generate code based on my GUI that I've generated. And then we can edit the code to add different functionalities to all of these different buttons. Okay, so exporting will save changes to your figure file in Matlab code. Do you wish to continue? Yes. And I'm going to call this calculator 2. Alright, so Matlab has now generated code both for my edit buttons as well as a figure file. So here we go. Now I have two different files here. So this one is going to generate my figure, and this one is going to make my code. So if I make my calculator 2 export MATLAB file active and I click run, it's going to pop up with the GUI I just made, except you'll see it doesn't really have any functionality. I can do whatever I want and it's not going to do anything. So we actually have to give it some information so that MATLAB knows what we want each one of these buttons or input windows to do. So we're going to do that next. Okay, so I have all of this code, and what the first bunch of lines of code do are generate my figure. So that structure that we created in the guided user interface developer environment, most of this code is just going to generate the figure. So you can see in this line of code here, it says do not edit, so we are not going to edit that part. We're going to scroll down to one of our buttons that we have cleverly named so that we know what they do. Okay, so edit one. Let's see. Okay, so where is our num1? So I don't remember what edit 1 is. I thought I changed my, I think it's this, but I thought I changed my string. Okay, no, so this is edit 1 here, that first edit box. So what this bit of code does, this tells MATLAB what to do when somebody inputs text into that area. And it gives you some nice helpful hints of what you maybe should do. So for a edit text window, one of the suggestions is to get the string that the user inputs and turn that into a double. So I have some code already written that I'm going to have to modify slightly from a different bit of code. So what we're going to do is we're going to get HObject, and that's essentially going to look through our UI control menu. Let's see. Let me pull it up here. So it's going to look through our UI control menu, and then it's going to find the item, the property that's named string. And it's going to create a variable of whatever that value that the user put in to string is. So we set our variable input equal to whatever the user put into that edit text box. And then we convert it into a double in this line of code. And then this if statement here, what it's doing is looking to see whether or not our input is a number. And if it's not, it's going to return an error message. But if it is, it's going to set the user data for this object to be number input. And then what this allows us to do is call this variable in other parts of our code. So if we want to refer to it, for example, when we press the plus sign, then we can do that. If we set the HObject user data equal to num input, we can refer to that later. Oh, and it seems like I had gotten rid of my end when I was copying in to here. So just make sure that you have an end statement. So let's see if we can run this. Okay, and I'm going to type something in here and see what happens. Ah, yay. Okay, so I typed in something that is a string and not a number. So when Matlab tried to convert it into a number, it realized, oh, it's not a number, so we get an error message. So I'm going to change this into 3. And it's not going to do anything because we haven't programmed any of the rest of these buttons to do anything yet. But it's not going to generate an error message. And I'm going to change this to number 1 because this is... that cell concentration was reminiscent of a different calculator that I made. Okay, cool. So we have our dialog message for our first text box. And so you can do a very similar thing for the next set of the next edit box. So here I'm going to scroll past this create function and then go down to this number 2 callback and paste this in here. And so then we are going to get another value here. So let's run this now and see what happens. So if I put in cat here, hit OK, it's going to give me an error. If I put in 5 and 7, it's not going to do anything because we haven't programmed anything to happen. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to scroll down and find the place where I declared my cancel button. And I'm going to find that. Where is it? Oh. Okay. Looking. We can probably get rid of. Probably minimize that. Okay. Where's cancel? Bloop, bloop, bloop. Divide, multiply, minus. Oh, it might be above this, actually. Yeah, here we go. Close. Okay, so I'm going to put some code in here. So this is going to, this quest dialog command is going to bring up a box that asks the user if they want to close the program. And it creates 3 buttons, yes, no, and cancel. So button, what that variable returns is the user's answer. So if the user clicks on yes, what this part of the function is going to do is close calculator. And I'm going to change this to calculator 2 so that it closes the right part of the GUI. Okay, so let's run this. See what happens. Close. No. It's going to go back to that menu. But if I click yes, then it'll close. Oh, do I have an issue here? calculator to export, maybe? Let's try that. Okay, yes, if I add in export here, it seems to work now. Okay, so close, yes, woohoo, okay, great. Okay, now I scroll down to the plus function callback, and I'm going to add some code in here. So the first thing it's going to do is find the object associated with the tag of num1. So this is the edit window. Actually, in ours, it's named edit1, and then the second one is named num2. We changed the tag to be num2, but I guess I forgot to change the one for the first one. So it is going to create an object so it's going to create variables that house essentially the location of the edit1 and num2 objects, and then we are going to get the user data from N1 and N2. And remember, when we were setting our user data up here, we set it to whatever the input is as long as the input is a number. So if I scroll back down here, we're going to use num1 and num2 as the user data information, so that should contain the string. And then I'm going to create a variable answer, and because I'm doing the plus callback, I'm just going to add my two numbers together and set that equal to my variable answer. And then I'm going to create a string that contains both this text, so answer colon, and then a space, and then whatever. I'm going to convert my answer variable into a string and concatenate that. So strcat essentially smushes strings together to form one string. And then the last thing I'm going to do in this line of code, or I guess there's two more things. So I'm going to set answer to answer string. And I think mine is actually named answer box. So I'm going to set answer box to answer string. And what that's going to do is it's going to cause the text that I created here, so answer and then my number, to pop up in that empty static text item that we created. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is display a code that tells the user that it is running. So I'm going to run this and see if it works. Okay, so I'll input an item, a number into the first box and one into the second box, and then hit the plus. And then in our little static text area, we see that the answer pops up here. And you can do a very similar thing for the rest of the buttons, which I will let you figure out on your own. So it's going to be very, very similar. And then you can click the close button, and I do want to close it, so it's going to shut down my GUI. And that's pretty much it. So if you go in and edit the minus, the multiply and divide callbacks with essentially code very similar to what is here, you should have a working calculator that will let you input two numbers and then calculate an answer.